Not all predators hunt in the jungle. Some walk among us in plain sight, wearing disarming smiles instead of baring fangs. They move through the world like an apex predator through tall grass, calm, confident, and utterly cold inside.
But the predator in this story isn't a lion or wolf. It's a person. A person with no remorse, no empathy, no conscience. They look human. They speak like us. But inside, they are fundamentally different. What do you call a mind like that? One that calculates and consumes without the burden of guilt or love? We call it a psychopath. The human predator in our midst. What goes on inside the mind of a psychopath? This question has haunted psychologists, philosophers, and anyone who has encountered evil in a human face. To understand the psychopath is to peer into an abyss of cold logic and emptiness. To witness a form of human nature stripped of the very qualities that make us human. In clinical terms, psychopathy is defined by a profound lack of empathy, remorse, or conscience. A psychopath can lie, steal, or hurt others without a flicker of guilt. Psychologist Robert D. Hare famously described psychopaths as social predators who charm, manipulate, and ruthlessly plow their way through life, leaving a trail of broken rules and broken lives. What makes this condition especially insidious is the psychopath's ability to hide in plain sight. Far from the deranged movie caricatures, real psychopaths often come across as friendly, confident, and even charming. They are experts at faking normal human emotion, smiling warmly, speaking eloquently, all the while feeling nothing inside. This ability to blend in makes psychopathy infamously difficult to spot, at least until one sees the trail of damage left behind. Clinically, psychopathy is measured by the Hare Psychopathy Checklist Revised, PCLR, a 20-item assessment of traits like superficial charm, grandiosity, deceitfulness, and callousness. A perfect score is 40, a score of 30 or above qualifies as psychopathic. For context, the infamous serial killer Ted Bundy scored 39 out of 40 on this scale, an almost unsurpassed result. Psychopaths are relatively rare. Studies suggest roughly 1% of the general population could be classified as psychopathic, but their impact is wildly disproportionate to their numbers. In prisons, psychopathy rates are many times higher. Psychopaths make up a significant share of chronic violent offenders. In other words, this tiny fraction of people is responsible for an enormous amount of human suffering. For all the harm they cause, not all psychopaths end up behind bars. Some wear suits instead of shackles. Research has found psychopaths overrepresented in positions of power. For example, one study found about 1 in 5 corporate executives showed strong psychopathic traits. Paradoxically, certain psychopathic traits can initially look like leadership strengths. Fearlessness, charisma, and other bold qualities can help an individual rise in competitive environments. They project confidence and take risky initiatives that more cautious people might avoid. Indeed, their flamboyant boldness can make them remarkably successful in the short run. But in the long run, a leader with no conscience inevitably leaves disaster in their wake. Why would nature allow such dangerous personalities to exist? Some evolutionary thinkers speculate that psychopathy persists as a niche strategy. A few ruthless individuals who exploit the trust of the many. Such fearless opportunists might gain short-term advantages in power or survival. But it's a high-risk strategy that often collapses once others catch on. In the workplace, a psychopath's behavior follows a predictable pattern. Charm upward, abuse downward. They may captivate bosses with bold ideas and flattery, while bullying and exploiting subordinates without remorse. Lacking empathy, they think nothing of taking credit for others' work, lying to cover their tracks, or harassing employees to tears. Over time, this toxic influence poisons the entire workplace. Morale craters, ethics erode, and the company's culture turns fear-driven. For example, media tycoon Robert Maxwell, posthumously considered by experts to have been a likely corporate psychopath, epitomized this pattern. He exuded charisma publicly, but privately raided his employees' pension funds and perpetrated massive fraud to prop up his empire. Thousands of employees were betrayed in the process. This kind of snake in a suit shows how a psychopath in power can devastate lives and livelihoods, all without a hint of regret. Another realm where psychopaths wreak havoc is the world of cults. Many of history's notorious cult leaders, those who convinced followers to commit violence or even mass suicide, have been described as psychopathic. They combine superficial charm and grandiose claims, portraying themselves as prophets or saviors, with behind-the-scenes manipulation and abuse. Utterly lacking conscience, they use charisma as bait and control as their weapon, turning devotion into a tool of destruction. Consider Charles Manson, a charismatic psychopath who assembled a devoted family of followers in the late 1960s. Manson ultimately ordered his devotees to carry out brutal murders on his behalf. He himself did not wield the knife. He wielded people. After his capture, he showed no remorse for the victims. In his mind, the carnage was justified by his own twisted ideology. Psychopathy also underpins some of the world's worst serial killers. Ted Bundy, for instance, was a polished, educated man who appeared friendly and trustworthy, and he leveraged that trust to prey on women. He would feign injury or helplessness to lure victims, only to then rape and murder them in cold blood. Bundy described his crimes with chilling detachment, admitting he felt no real remorse. His victims meant no more to him than disposable objects. Not every psychopath is a murderer. Many never physically attack anyone. Some confine their destruction to emotional and financial harm, scamming, cheating, and bullying, often without technically breaking the law. Yet the potential for violence is always there. With no empathy to restrain them, if cruelty or even murder becomes the easiest route to their goal, they will take it. To them, hurting someone is no more troubling than breaking an object. Psychopaths don't just make headlines. They infiltrate ordinary lives as well, as charming lovers, devoted friends, or ambitious co-workers. In personal relationships, a psychopath can seem perfectly caring and attentive at first. They shower their target with affection and praise, appearing to be the ideal partner or friend. But this is a calculated facade. Once you're hooked and your guard is down, the mask slips. A psychopath often uses love as a weapon. They might engage in love bombing, an onslaught of affection, flattery, and promises of a future, all engineered to create rapid attachment. Once the victim is emotionally invested, the psychopath tightens control. They begin isolating the victim and eroding their self-worth, alternating charm with cruelty to maintain control. What started as a whirlwind romance turns into a private nightmare. With the psychopath pulling all the strings, pathological lying comes as easily as breathing to a psychopath. Big lies, small lies. They'll say whatever serves their agenda with zero guilt. Their brazenness often goes unchallenged because normal people can't imagine someone lying so casually. And with lying comes gaslighting, making you doubt your own memory and sanity. A psychopath might insist, "I never said that," when they did, or claim your concerns are crazy, sowing confusion to maintain control. In the psychopath's eyes, other people are mere tools or toys. Friends, family, lovers, co-workers, all are pieces on a board to be moved or sacrificed as needed. Because they truly do not care about anyone else, they feel no loyalty, no obligation, no guilt. The moment you cease to be useful or become an obstacle, the psychopath will discard you without a second thought. One cruel irony is how invisible psychopaths can be. Because we assume everyone has some conscience, we have trouble fathoming someone who has none. We might ignore early warning signs, dismissing a lie or small cruelty, simply because we can't imagine someone who feels absolutely no guilt. The psychopath exploits that blind spot. They play the part of a decent human so convincingly that by the time you glimpse the predator beneath, it's often too late. What truly makes a psychopath's mind different? To find out, we must go beyond behavior and look inside the brain. Modern neuroscience has revealed striking anomalies in the psychopath's neural wiring. Key brain circuits for empathy, fear, and moral decision-making simply don't function normally. It's as if the wiring for conscience is damaged or disconnected. One brain imaging experiment captured the psychopath's empathy deficit in action. Researchers asked participants to imagine someone else in pain while undergoing an fMRI scan. In a typical person, this activates a network of brain regions involved in empathy. In psychopaths, those same regions stay inactive. There is no typical empathetic response to imagining another's pain. Their brains, it seems, do not register others' suffering. Tellingly, when psychopaths were asked to imagine themselves in pain, their brains did respond normally. They feel their own pain, just not anyone else's. This contrast, empathy for me, but not for you, perfectly illustrates the psychopath's self-centered mindset at a neurological level. In psychopaths, areas responsible for empathy do not connect with the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, a region crucial for moral decision-making. In a normal brain, this connection makes us feel an emotional tug when we contemplate harming someone. In a psychopath's brain, that emotional tug is absent. Rational thinking is cut off from moral feeling. As neuroscientist Jean Desetti put it, the empathy circuits are faulty, making psychopaths ill-equipped for this basic human emotion. Psychopaths also show a blunted fear response. The brain's fear center, the amygdala, is often underactive in psychopaths. They can remain eerily calm in situations that would terrify an ordinary person. Being threatened with consequences, or even witnessing extreme violence, might not faze them at all. Brain scans confirm a severe disconnect in this fear circuit. A key reason psychopaths seem immune to punishment. As one expert observed, guiltless and remorseless, psychopaths do not seem to fear or learn anything from retribution, describing a cornerstone of their moral insensitivity. On the flip side, a psychopath's brain overvalues reward. Studies show an overactive ventral striatum, reward center, and underactive frontal control in psychopaths. In practice, this means they're driven by immediate gratification. Temptations of money, sex, or power loom large, while future consequences barely register. This neurological bias for instant reward helps explain their impulsivity. Their brains scream, "Yes, do it now," and the usual "maybe you shouldn't" voice is too faint to matter. All these brain differences paint a clear picture. In psychopaths, the machinery of conscience is broken. They know what is considered right and wrong, but they don't feel it. The emotional alarm bells that stop most of us from doing harm, empathy, guilt, fear, are silent in them. One researcher described a psychopath as having a cold, intact intellect, but a malfunctioning emotional compass, navigating the world in a fundamentally different way. Can a psychopath be rehabilitated? Unfortunately, no reliable treatment exists. Traditional therapy has little effect. It often just teaches them to become more manipulative. You can't implant a conscience in someone's brain. There's some hope that intensive intervention in childhood might help steer callous children off this path. But for an adult psychopath, there is no known cure. They remain a dangerous puzzle for psychology. The existence of psychopaths raises deep philosophical challenges. How do we understand morality when a person can know right from wrong intellectually, yet feel absolutely no moral pull? A psychopath can recite the words of morality, but is deaf to its music. This disconnect forces us to ask, is morality just about knowing rules? Or is it rooted in the feelings that give those rules meaning? Some have called psychopaths morally blind. Just as a colorblind person cannot see certain hues, a psychopath is blind to certain human feelings. They lack what David Hume called the moral sentiments, the sympathy and compassion that underlie ethical behavior. In them, moral reasoning exists in a vacuum, unattached to the human emotions that make it matter. Many moral philosophers assume that if one truly understands the good, one will be motivated to do it. Psychopaths are a living refutation of that idea. They understand the concept of right and wrong, but it does not move them. This suggests that reason alone is not enough for morality. Emotion is essential. Without empathy and guilt, moral principles are just abstract words. This ambiguity also blurs the line between evil and illness. Psychopaths know what they're doing is wrong, yet they feel no remorse. So, are they evil, or are they incapable of moral feeling? Courts say they are sane and culpable for their actions. Some philosophers, however, argue that a person who literally cannot feel empathy might not be fully accountable in the same way others are. One camp suggests that expecting moral behavior from a psychopath is like expecting a blind person to see. They lack the capacity, so blame is misplaced. This exempting view holds that psychopaths are in a sense morally disabled. It's a controversial stance, to say the least. Others contend that psychopaths choose their actions with knowledge of right and wrong, so they absolutely are responsible for the evil they do. Society largely agrees. We don't let someone get away with murder just because he feels no remorse. Lack of empathy is no excuse under the law. What makes us human? Many would answer, our ability to care for others, to empathize, to act from conscience. If so, the psychopath presents an unsettling anomaly, a human form devoid of that core of humanity. They remind us, in the starkest way, that qualities like kindness and remorse are not givens. A person can be biologically human, yet lack the very virtues that define humanity at its best. Some call psychopaths people with a heart of ice, or intraspecies predators among us. They are living proof that a person can appear human while lacking the essential humanity inside. Psychopaths drive home the point that our moral compass isn't universal. Most of us take for granted that empathy and guilt are part of being human. The psychopath shows they aren't. In a psychopath's world, concepts like right and wrong carry no weight. They exist beyond good and evil, recognizing only personal gain. It's a mindset that defies our usual understanding of morality. For society, the priority in dealing with psychopaths is not rehabilitation, but protection. We can't easily change them, so we focus on limiting the harm they do. Often that means incarceration, not to reform them, but simply to keep others safe. It's a grim reality. We lock the predator in a cage to shield the rest of the flock. We also face a hard ethical question. If we could cure a psychopath by altering their brain, should we? Would that be a mercy or a violation of their identity? This remains speculative, since no such cure exists, but it raises dilemmas about free will and the core of personhood. In studying psychopathy, we're ultimately forced to appreciate our own conscience. Most of us have an inner voice that hurts when others hurt, and that makes us regret when we do wrong. Psychopaths lack that voice, and the horror of their actions highlights how crucial empathy and guilt truly are. It's an uncomfortable mirror, but it shows that our capacity to care is one of our greatest strengths. As much as we prize logic and intellect, a psychopath reminds us that rationality without compassion is dangerous. Brilliance, unguided by conscience, can become a weapon. Our empathy and remorse are what keep our intelligence humane. Without them, intellect becomes cold and perilous. Looking into the psychopath's mind challenges our concept of good and evil. We tend to expect evil to come with anger or madness, but here it comes as calm indifference. What does it mean to be good when someone can know good but feel nothing for it? It suggests that goodness isn't just about following rules. It requires empathy. And evil sometimes is not active malice, but simply the absence of empathy. This journey into the psychopath's mind has been disturbing but illuminating. We've stared into the moral abyss and seen what humanity looks like without empathy or conscience. It's a harsh truth, but knowledge is power. You see now that qualities like empathy, conscience, and love aren't just virtues. They are the only things keeping us from the darkness. This knowledge is dark, but it gives you the power to choose which side of yourself to feed. Now that you've glimpsed the cold reality of the psychopath, you face a choice. You can let this knowledge harden you or haunt you, or you can let it sharpen your awareness and strengthen your commitment to the values that psychopaths lack. We may not control nature's design, but we can defy it, not with force, but with choice. In a world that often rewards the ruthless, empathy becomes a rebellion, and rebellion, a form of meaning. You have looked into the eyes of the predator and seen the truth. Whatever you do, don't close your eyes again. If you stay still, you fall back to sleep. And if you fall back asleep, you know what awaits you. Another life on autopilot. Before closing, leave one sentence in the comments. Not a reaction, not a slogan. One brutally honest sentence that marks the moment you stopped lying to yourself. Disappear. Live. And when you're ready, come back. I'll be waiting, where I always am, on the edge, where it all begins.